you've used Bandcamp Live. We can talk about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think many people have really taken advantage of it.
Yeah, I know they've been trickling it out slowly, and now it's available for a wider swatch of folks. But we did a really early one when they first launched with an artist that was.
You've used Bandcamp Live. Oh, sorry.
What's
Okay, I think we are live.
cool.
So, hello, viewers, future, present, and past. I'm Colleen Kruger from Music Calgary, based here in Mohkinstsis in Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. This is our final digital talks and part of our SoundOff Summit Digital Strategies. Today we're talking with Trevor Peterson from Fire Talks label. You're based in Chicago or New York?
Based in New York. Yeah.
New York. Sweet. Yeah, we met in New York at a cafe a long while ago. So yeah, we're just going to talk with Trevor about his label, just how he got started working in music and with artists, what digital platforms and apps he's been exploring, especially this past year, and where he thinks everything can go in the future. So hi, Trevor. It's a big topic we can cover today. Yeah, if you want to kick off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your job and how you got started working in music.
For sure. I got my start working in music on the artist side, actually, in 2007-ish. I started a band in college with some friends, and this was like right at the sort of, the kind of sweet spot for indie blogs, I guess. So we had, I guess a familiar story at this point, but we had thrown a couple of tracks online. We were, going to school at the time, and within a few weeks we had some write-ups on like Pitchfork and Stereo Gum and Fader and stuff, and like basically things just took off like immediately. We weren't even anticipating like really. We had done a couple of DIY tours, and we were very much like into just like playing warehouses and that kind of thing. And then as soon as we got a little interest outside of our hometown, we had started to field sort of like label inquiries, and eventually went on to like release a few records, and all the way up until 2015, front end of 2016, I was touring in that band, both internationally and in the US. And basically during the entire time, I had sort of like conceptualized the record label and had been casually releasing like 7 inches. It was always like designed to be a vinyl label. Like a bunch of the initial releases weren't even on iTunes, which was the digital avenue at the time. And we had, it was casual because I was touring in a band consistently and didn't necessarily have the time to, make it a real big thing. But we had some success. I put out like some friends, Tennis, first 7-inch, and, a few bands that were kind of also on the rise in that early blog time. Then once the band kind of, faded away, we all kind of drifted apart, went separate directions. And in 2016, 17-ish, I had made a conscious effort to sort of like grow the label, and that's where we're at today.
Nice.
During that time, digital became, a major focus. So.
Yeah, 100%. So like a lot of those blogs, I guess at that early stage of blogging and like all of those press outlets, the attention from the audience was like actually quite attentive and seemed to be able to move the needle maybe a little bit more than it does today.
I would say both within the industry and outside. Like you would notice attendance at shows increase and that kind of thing, based on sort of the level of press that you were getting. I would say that like it's it's a different landscape now, obviously. It's,
Yeah,
takes
definitely.
more than that to sort of like,
Yeah, it takes like a combination of all the things coming together,
yeah,
which is interesting because it's still like digital access to the same information. It's just how people engage with it has
yeah.
changed. And there's just
I
so much more.
I totally like sort of draw the correlation between smartphones and social media apps also, because that wasn't a thing back then either. Like nobody had a smartphone. We were all on flip phones. Like that didn't come in really widely, I would say, like maybe in 2013 or something, 14, like everybody in the van had a cell phone, like a smartphone. But like previous to that, it was kind of, you know, yeah,
Yeah, it's a little bit more focused and like a lot more regional, it seems like it was back in the day. Back in the day.
back in the day.
Like, not that long ago. It's just like the evolution of everything is just very rapid.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so you got your like you sort of deep dove into like doing the label in 2017. So like how did you first approach the bands and like how your release strategy formulated? Was it still vinyl focused and physical, or did you focus it
Yeah,
on?
we've always had a focus on physical. I would say in 2015, when sort of Spotify became, you know, more of like a used thing, you could see sort of like the user base like explode in that time. And that's when, frankly, it was based on just seeing revenue come in that we shifted some focus to like, you know, playlisting strategy and all of that sort of thing. But you know, it was a long road to sort of get to where we are, to build out kind of a system to,
Mhm. Yeah.
but yeah, I would say throughout the history, we've always had a strong focus on physical, and mostly because, I got my start sort of on the, like, just interacting mostly with independent record stores, and that's sort of where my personal music discovery happened throughout my, childhood on. So more than anything, that's just where my foundation was in terms of discovering new music. I had like a Spin magazine subscription as well or something, but it was like, yeah,
You'd go and dig and then talk with the person at the counter and be like, "What's cool?" Get to know each other and, like, get to know each other's styles, and personally, I did that too, so I fully relate, and it
yeah,
was a more like, uh, earned discovery, you know? Sometimes you buy a CD and you're like, "Oh, this one's so this one's crap, why did I buy it?" But then you just own it and you're like, "Alright." And then sometimes you buy, like, an unknown album and you're just like, "Whoa, this is my favorite album of all time," you know?
yeah, totally. In that respect, the physical game is directly correlated back to digital these days, because I feel like most of the purchasing is happening after fans have experienced the album like more than one time usually, and then they're making the decision to purchase. So
Yeah.
digital becomes like, very important part of the physical marketing strategy as well. So
Yeah, totally, 100%, and people just discover in very different ways these days.
yeah.
Or like your artists that you're working with, like you say that playlisting is like part of your strategy as a whole. So like how do you approach that?
um it's it's sort of a like an ongoing evolution of a thing. But I would say there's like 5 chapters, if you will, to the strategy. And number one is best practices, paying attention to all of the DSPs and what their best practices are, and executing on that. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to sort of placements and things like that, you're putting your best foot forward if you're paying attention to what each DSP's best practices are. They want to see certain things, and if you do that and execute, you're giving yourself an advantage. In that regard, I would say like the second thing, is paying attention to data. Like, we do a lot of pitching based on performance, which is kind of the name of the game, you know, using Chartmetric, using Spotify for artists, Apple for artists, and just monitoring our releases and looking for any signs of organic engagement and using that to our advantage when it comes to pitching. But also, like, the third level is not just focusing on editorial. There's a wide range of influencer level playlisting that is important as well and can affect the editorial side. So we're doing a lot of in our PR strategy, like, if NPR isn't doing all songs considered, like for a certain track, we're making sure it's pitched and considered for their New Music Friday playlist, that sort of thing. So
yeah, that's great.
yeah. And on top of that, just making sure that the label first and foremost, and then the artist, as much as they're willing to participate in, sharing out links and making sure fans are aware that they can listen on certain services. And then, the fifth level is just, even though certain DSPs have wider user bases, making sure we're not neglecting any certain DSP, and we're thinking about all of them, and pitching accordingly. So that's
Yeah, totally. They all do like a little bit of a different strategy in how you approach them. So I think that's like great advice in terms of approaching them as they want to be approached. And like it is a bit of a learning curve to figure out how to do that and maybe just focus on one and try to get that a couple successes with one and then learn the next one.
Yeah, certainly, because you can look at all of the DSPs provide, whether it's through your distributor or even through like Spotify for Artists or whatever, you can access the best practices. Some of it's a little dense if you don't have, like, if you're just an independent artist without label support or something, it could be dense if you don't know necessarily the inner workings of music distribution, etc. But I think at the core level, anyone can understand like what each service is after. And
Yeah, 100%. And it is worth diving into. Even if you're an independent artist, like if those tools are available, like learn how to use them. And
yeah,
like you might see one or two successes and like those are your stairs to like building out your career. So
yeah, totally. And we tailor our marketing to each artist so that we're doing the best possible job to tell that artist's story. And you might not think that like what playlist an artist fits into is an extension of like their story, but it is, so thinking about it that way is important. And also, just sort of, yeah, I guess back to kind of the best practices stuff. It, it it's only as strong as, like, your pitching can only be as strong as the music that you make and you're promoting. So
yeah, fair. It always comes back to that. Yeah,
uh,
quality music will get attention. Do you
yeah.
make a wish list of playlists? So for each platform, do you explore the playlists that they create and then sort of write out different targets for each release?
Yeah, every single release has a list of targets for every DSP. It's part of our process.
Yeah, and it's like
And
great
then
to give to your distributor because then they don't have to do that work.
yeah, and they'll probably want to have their own ideas as well. And it's not by no means like a we know like we don't position it as like we know what we're talking about. Like take our, it's like we look at it as a collaborative thing. And but we do try to do the research as much as we can, and have time for, like, that's certainly part of the strategy.
Yeah,
And I think also, like, applying, like I was saying before, we tailor our marketing plans artist specific, but we have a system in place for every release so that it's consistent. Our partners know what to expect from what we're doing. They know what the information coming up from us looks like and are able to ingest that and utilize it, you know,
nice.
properly.
Yeah, that's great. Like in terms of creating those relationships with each platform or your distro, like being consistent and like also working with them to learn what they need and then providing that up front.
Totally.
Harder, I guess, for like independent artists because those resources are like not necessarily directly there. And the third party distro is like maybe not as direct, like one on one. Whereas if you have your own distro, you do sort of have that access to create that relationship. So it varies, but a lot of those backend tools are still available to independent artists to utilize.
Yeah, I mean, Spotify for Artists is, is a great
What
tool. I think everybody should
tools
be,
use.
yeah. So
From playlisting onwards, I'm sure you use other platforms. So what other platforms do you really like to build out an audience on?
we're focused on all of them. I mean, just from like a user base revenue perspective, you kind of have to Spotify number one, Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud, all of the players. But we've done some things with Qobuz lately, like did a label curated playlist, like Deezer, some stuff with Deezer, even though that's like kind of a specific territory.
Mhm.
There, that's another one. Pandora, the folks over there really love music, and don't forget about Pandora.
And
there,
Pandora would be more Australia based, or I think so.
there's
Worldwide,
reps
but
here in the United States that we dialogue with. So yeah, but I mean, yeah, for sure, they're certainly spread out.
yeah,
And
that's
yeah, I mean, the list goes on. There's like whatever 200 DSPs or something. I would say it would
yeah.
be
How do you manage all those relationships at the end of the day?
yeah, I would say at the end of the day, like just take a look at where you're having success and focus some time and effort on that. And as you can, expand outward, but
Yeah, that's perfect advice. Just start one place and then start building out. Because every time you do get better at the thing that you practice at, and then the other things are, then you could add new things as you go.
yeah,
Um, I'm sure you utilize Bandcamp quite a lot. We sort of
love Bandcamp.
yeah, and
Um,
especially this past year with their Fridays, like I feel like they've grown so much as a company.
yeah, it's been explosive growth from the company perspective, and just it's sort of been certainly seen on our side as well. So I think Bandcamp, if we're talking digital, Bandcamp is not like, I don't think a tool that a lot of people are using to stream music, obviously, but um, people that use Bandcamp are highly engaged. They want to spend money on music and do so regularly. So it's great, and their editorial is, functions in a lot differently than any other digital services editorial functions.
Yeah.
It's essentially a publication.
Yeah, I would agree. They do like we have a panel with different departments of Bandcamp talking about how they all sort of work together. And like it's sort of crazy how they've organized it in a way that is still like such a great experience just from the fan side. But like you have a website that has every genre of music imaginable and every style of band can curate their own page to stylize, but you never feel like you're leaving the site, and you can just go through like a rabbit hole of information, editorial, through collections, through artists, through like there's just so many ways to like bounce around that site.
Totally. I know their like tagline is, has to do with the independent record store, like online or whatever, but it really does feel like that. It feels like, you know, an independent record store with everybody's got their records on consignment, and, like they take
Yeah, true. I've never looked at it that way. I like that. And it does feel like you can get into the sort of crate digging kind of vibe of it.
Totally, totally. And they are building out some recommendation algorithms that are like slowly but surely taking shape if you really pay attention to the footer below, like, your releases, those kind of things are, maybe not what everybody's thinking about, but they're, you know, those things are important, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it just guides users around if they're like, oh, this might be like something I already know and like, or yeah, just pretty great. I do notice from the label perspective, like if one thing sells and it's in a collection, I notice a couple more sales and it's like back catalog stuff. So
Yep.
you realize that how their algorithm or how the sharing aspect of the site works, it does what it's meant to do. Which,
Yeah. And for that reason, I think because their algorithmic stuff hasn't been necessarily like a focus, I think there's a lot, we're going to see even more growth over the coming years when they start to focus more energy on that. And I know that you know, they're likely, developing that side of their business, I'm sure.
no, it's amazing. Yeah, it's sort of amazing to have a company that gives so much power to the artists or to the business side of music while also like staying really grounded in like like I don't know, the individual, I guess, and the fans being like able to like explore. They do a
Yeah.
good job. Just
I
owning
mean,
Bandcamp, but yeah, they do such a great job, and they have supported artists this past year, and it's very noticeable, I think, for a lot of artists. So
mhm.
that's cool. So is Bandcamp like your sort of base store, like where you list everything, or do you have a couple different platforms that you sell physical on?
Sell physical. We have a web store that we
Okay.
sell physical on. We do our own fulfillment. I'm a big proponent of e-commerce, honestly, like, and owning your own e-com. Like that's a big part of our business. Honestly, is like, I know a lot of folks, um, it's have to outsource fulfillment and those sort of things. But for us, it's just something I've built into the business because I think it's really important to have ownership over that. So we do have a web store that, um, you know, we update daily and like, kind of focus energy on, and then Bandcamp as well. I would say like, because of the discoverability on Bandcamp, though, Bandcamp outpaces our web store a decent little bit, especially this past year.
Hmm. Yeah, we have some people just prefer to buy on Bandcamp, even
Yeah,
if you can buy on our store.
yeah.
They'll
Vice
still go to Bandcamp. So you're like, all right.
Totally. I think vice versa too. We have people that prefer to buy on our store because they know that the margins are, a lot better for us on our own web store. So
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, that's great to have both. And I definitely agree that like owning your e-commerce and like ability to talk to your client or like clients, customers, or your fans as directly as possible is amazing. So
totally.
some platforms like YouTube or Spotify, you have followers, but there's no direct line to them at all. So I think having that or having access to direct communication is great.
Yeah. And having access to your fans' information, like, and
Mhm.
being good custodians of it, and like not, you know, I don't know. I think it's as like any kind of business in 2021, just like thinking about user data and customer data and like making sure you're a good custodian of that um, is a key part in retaining fans. So
Totally. Do
yeah,
you, because you do the fulfillment, do you enjoy the interaction a lot, like the one-on-one interaction with people?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Certainly. I mean, slowly I don't personally do the fulfillment as much anymore, but I think we do enjoy having that connection with our fans, like, and being able to trace like an email blast about an artist new to the label that nobody's ever heard of and see the pre-orders for something that maybe folks have only heard one track of, but that the trust and like the sort of, that is, it's why we do this, so.
Yeah, totally. I would agree. I do more fulfillment like at the label on the label side of my jobs. And I quite enjoy making sure that the fans are like buying something that they want and that like we're communicating and I'm telling them about new stuff and like they sort of get joy out of that too. So that's nice. I always like when people cheer me on in the mail order and it's not like my mail order has not arrived. I'm like, but I like when they're like, woohoo, it arrived. I'm like, that's my favorite kind of email.
I think this past year has proven, you know, a challenge for anybody like fulfilling any kind of online orders. And
Yeah, we're not all Amazon, that's for sure. But yeah, and like timelines are slow and there's border restrictions and lots of custom things and it's hard to know. But yeah, it's a whole new challenge. And I do think that like definitely the amount of shipping has increased and just like fans buying direct from the companies. But it's great to see and it's definitely needed in times to support whatever we're doing, all the things. So yeah, so you own your own store, you use Bandcamp, and then you did mention that you dabbled into Bandcamp Live a bit.
yes,
What's that experience like?
we've done a couple of Bandcamp Live events. It's been a good experience. We've done also non-Bandcamp live events as well with other platforms like Noon Chorus and a couple of others. They all sort of like have different functions, but I would say like again, the Bandcamp live experience is much like Bandcamp in general. Like you have complete autonomy over how your thing is presented and like um, you control every aspect of it, even um, down to like you have to run the stream yourself from OBS software. So like there's that aspect of it as well. It's like, it's all your, your
Right. Yeah.
thing. So
Cool.
that could be a setback for some folks, especially people that don't necessarily have fast internet or something like that. So, there are drawbacks on that end, but I would
Mhm.
say overall positive experience. It's really helpful how integrated it is into like the Bandcamp sort of fan system and,
Yeah.
emails go out and like, yeah. So.
Yeah, I love that direct communication, like almost automate it too and all the
Mhm.
levels. But I think they were mentioning too, like adding a merch table, or is that already a thing?
Yeah, the merch table's there. You can have up to 8 items for sale. It's at the bottom. Looks very much like any other live stream. There's the stream, a chat bar, and then the merch table. And then an interesting thing that they've built in to the functionality is every time someone buys something from the merch table, it shows up in the chat. So and so bought this LP. Um, you
That's
know, which you could go either way on.
inspired,
Yeah,
inspire other people to jump in. Well, that's cool. I have not utilized it, but that's really cool that it has that kind of functionality and like built into like to your followers already, which is awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And because you're running it yourself, there's like no sort of there's a lot less there's a lot less like production and planning and all of that stuff needed. You
Yeah.
know,
True. Like
um,
no pre-recording. They only do live or can
no,
you?
you can pre-record it and
Okay.
stream it live. It all runs on OBS software, but because literally like if you have the tool, like any artist can, much like going on Instagram live, you could just throw one up. I mean, the nature of the platform, it's ideal to have a window to promote it, to actually get people to come. But I think
Yeah.
just having that sort of like ease of use, it creates interesting possibilities, I think, even post pandemic for a lot of artists to utilize it.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a consensus on this like live streaming side. Like it won't be 100% of that side of the industry, but it will be a staying side of the industry. And it's sort of an interesting concept just to maybe travel less and reach wider audiences, like in some ways, without all the costs. Of course, like our level of production for the live streaming will have to like keep just going up, but it's possible, you know.
It's possible. Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I
Have
mean,
you like done so you worked with Noon Course, so those are like more pre-recorded live streaming events that are like
exactly.
exclusive behind a paywall. Did you what was that experience sort of like pre-recording and getting everyone together and promoting?
We we did a full blown production for that one. A band we work with called Deeper. We recorded. They had a record come out March 27th, 2020, which was like right. You know, they had to jump off of like a 80-day tour, like a lot of bands. You know, like at
Mhm.
that had records come out at that time. So we ran a um, we did a 1 year anniversary live stream on the 1 year anniversary of the album. We rented a venue in Chicago, beautiful venue. We brought in an audio engineer, 4 cameras, and like, you know, kind of like did a full production. And then we justified that level of production because then we pressed the audio to a deluxe album. So now we're releasing like a double LP of that record with the pre-recorded audio or
Uh,
the audio from that show. So we're sort of like, you know, we're just trying to maximize the content as much as we can and like offer it for sale in as many ways as we can. So
yeah, 100%. And I guess like at the end of the day, you can reuse that live footage down the line. Giving it
yeah,
a
we did. We actually did run on Bandcamp. Like we did a Bandcamp live, just like with the same footage
nice.
for those that missed it, to announce the deluxe record. So it was
Yeah,
part of the larger plan. But yeah, that's
totally.
absolutely right. Yeah, using, you know, there's no rules. You can use you can use that
And
footage.
there's no guarantee every person's online watching everything.
Totally. You're gonna grab some you know, you're gonna grab more folks. Like each, I wouldn't, you know, there is probably a threshold of how many times you can share like a ticketed live stream, but there's other ways to utilize video content that isn't ticketed as well. So
Yeah, 100%. And I like the strategy that like you staggered it a bit. So it's like, here's one focus, but then you have something new to announce and then reuse it in like
yeah,
a different form.
ultimately, totally. And then we're gonna do a third like tier. We call it, you know, windowed release of this footage, but we're gonna once the deluxe is out, we're gonna let the each individual video live in Apple Music as like, you know, with the deluxe album, so you can view the video in Apple Music as well as listen to the album. So
Yeah, that's like great use of one kind of production and like using it in multiple different ways. That's ideal.
yeah, yeah, we put a lot of thought into it
Yeah.
prior to even hitting record, you know, honestly. So
Yeah. So like moving into the future of like production and like live streaming, is like live streaming going to be part of your strategy for bands moving forward and how to do
yeah,
that stuff?
I think so. I think our focus right now, honestly, like we in this kind of limbo area where tours are getting announced, etc. We're certainly working live streams into our campaigns, as much as artists are comfortable with that.
Mhm.
But I think that just the energy that we've put into a couple of these live streams is sort of going towards you know, getting our bands back on the road again. So there's going to be a little moment here where we're trying, you know, trying to figure out like, you know, how do both things work symbiotically. But certainly been thinking about it. I think Bandcamp is something we'll definitely continue to utilize just because um, there's a lower threshold. You know, you can set tickets lower. It's like, yeah, just yeah.
Yeah, and also like when you're building out your Bandcamp fans, like you can communicate directly to them in the future. So
Totally.
everyone discovering you on that platform, like you can own their following and or their email if they give it to you. So then you're just like building out your full like direct communication,
Totally.
which I prefer. You know, it's nice to like have those points of communication with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, like with touring, like what a tug and pull, eh? It's like let's announce for the fall, but then still sort of unsure if that will like mosey forward, which is hard to wrap your head around sometimes. You're just like, this should just keep, you know, I would love to see bands on the road again, but like I wonder what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Get into
that,
mystic talk, but don't know.
yeah, no, I think the idea is to just plow forward until we can't anymore, you know? So
Yeah, totally. So for like other bands of on your roster, like are they all comfortable with the live streaming and digital kind of content creation, or are some of them a little bit more withdrawn and just waiting for?
certainly runs the gamut, you know. W- we try to have, you know, meetings and, you know, dialogue with all of our artists about like, you know, staying on it in a way, but, you know, not every not every artist we work with is certainly inspired to create digital content. You know, they want to make music, like, of
Mhm.
course.
Yeah,
That
like not every artist is a TikTok artist.
exactly, exactly. So we try to, in our conversations with our artists, it's trying to find like what kind of things they're interested in, what kind of things they're interested in doing online, on socials, etc., and then catering kind of our, you know, our plan towards that. On the label side, we, I think, are sort of in our discussions with our team is like, you know, we're going to keep the digital conversation going as much as possible, like through our channels for every artist. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I think
Label.
on the artist side, it's like, you know, it's been challenging, especially, um, you know, without a main source of revenue, like touring was for a lot of artists, that, you know, and just the mental health implications of all of it is, it's been a challenge, I think, for all of us working in music through this and working directly with artists through this. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a spectrum of how everyone is emotionally affected by everything. Like where you're living. So a lot of your artists are in Chicago.
yeah, a handful in Chicago, few in New York, few like in London, you know, spread out for sure over the world. But yeah, I think a concentration of, you know, Chicago, New York, LA, major American cities, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Are there like any support lines for the artists in those different areas that they've been able to get in or like tap into?
In terms of just financial support or anything like that. We do have a Canadian artist, Pax, a new band from Toronto that, through Factor funding, we were able to do some things for this album campaign because we have a Canadian label partner on that release. So, you know, Canada by far more arts funding than the United States. I don't mean to
I
chuckle
was
when I
just
say that.
I'm a bit curious about sometimes other places that don't necessarily have those lines of support.
Yeah, we don't have federal funding here, but we do have some local funding. A couple of our artists have gotten grants through the city of Chicago. DCASE is an organization that gives funding to artists, local artists in Chicago, to similar to Factor, to create things, to,
Okay,
you know,
cool.
make things. So a couple of our artists have received grants from DCASE. One is making a record with a grant right now from DCASE. In New York, I feel like there are cultural grants from the city, but you don't see a lot of artists getting those because, I mean,
Musician.
musicians getting those because New York is such, you know, an multifaceted, arts driven city. We
Mhm.
have dance, we have theater, we have a lot of like very robust, you know, art scenes here. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
I
that
think that's a line I'm like maybe trying to draw is that like you're still able to like do certain things maybe without that stuff, without the funding support. Like you can think outside the box and be creative and utilize a ton of the tools that are online to still have some ways in engaging online, I guess.
yeah, totally. I mean, that's what we're all about. We sort of, um, yeah, focus on, um, you know, first and foremost, low spend, actionable like avenues of promotion, like social media obviously is the big one, especially during the pandemic. And then, also just sort of leaning into past social, just, building out a robust like email, marketing, program and things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Do you
yeah,
find any of the record stores that like you've um, had like lots of connection with are doing anything digital or like any ways that they're engaging on
yeah, we've done quite a few things with Rough Trade, who is, you know, a big supporter of our label. They, were their Brooklyn store until they closed, right down the street from our office. So it was ostensibly our local store. Um, so they, during the pandemic, started a program called Transmissions that um, are essentially an Instagram centered, um, IG live sort of situation, that is promoted throughout the Rough Trade like digital ecosystem prior to going live. So you get a bit of like a moment online, focused on it, which
yeah.
is good. And Rough Trade has a decent amount of social followers and that sort of thing. So we've done a few of those, and those are ongoing. So we have a couple more lined up for the summer, and um, yeah, those things are certainly part of our, um, you know, things that we're pitching constantly. A couple other retailers, um, we do a lot of retail marketing with indie record stores, which a lot of it prior to the pandemic was focused on in-store marketing opportunities, such as posters and banners and window clings and that sort of, real estate that you see in every record store.
Mm,
A lot of the big indie retailers moved a bunch of that stuff online,
mm,
which was really nice to see. So Amoeba had a really robust like online kind of social program that you could pitch to and run with them. We had an artist do a "What's in My Bag" with Amoeba, which is their like classic kind of YouTube show where artists show like what records are in, you know,
yeah.
prior to the pandemic, it was come into the record store and shop here and then show us what you got.
Mhm.
Um, During the pandemic, it became what's in your record collection at home. So we
Well,
had an artist. Yeah, it was cool. We had an artist do that.
it's like
So
being
yeah,
creative in any way, and it's like it's have you seen that with any venues trying to do interesting things online?
certainly seen that with, we've ran some things with, we've been kind of trying to try it all. Honestly, we've ran a couple live streams with Lincoln Hall in Chicago, which was produced by Audio Tree. So you had like
That's
a
cool.
symbiotic kind of like Audio Tree promotion, Lincoln Hall ticketed show, both entities promoted.
Mm,
So we did two of those. Um, Here in New York, there's a club called Baby's All Right that has rebranded into Baby's TV, and they've been running um, some pre-recorded live stream stuff, which we've done a couple of those through Baby's, and they promote it through, the Baby's kind of Baby's All Right promotional channels, promote it like a regular show basically. But they also set up, for mainly local artists, set up a film crew and like broadcasted a couple from the venue. And so we had an artist do that as well.
yeah,
For the show.
that's cool. I like, well, I mean, if you can utilize the space and have people in together, that's like a cool way to utilize the stage kind of atmosphere.
The nice thing about that is like, especially in the Audio Tree Lincoln Hall situation, like all of the production is handled by the venues and the production team. And, you know, all the artist has to really do is show up and play, and it's promoted like a regular show. It's promoted like a show. Whereas some of the like live streams that we own, the sort of like production burden falls on, you know, us or artists or management, whoever's kind of spearheading that production. So
Yeah, true. So did the venues like take on the cost of the production and reduce that out of the tickets, and then they
yeah,
sell tickets? Okay.
exactly.
It's one way to go about it, yeah. Just to
Yeah,
like keep things flowing and like keep some sort of process moving. And I
certainly. Most of the content is still owned, like all of the content is still owned by
yeah,
artists,
we own
management.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. The venue doesn't own the content is the most important part of the situation, you know. It's
that's cool. So the venue is actually like giving you access to utilize the video if you want, but they don't obviously don't own the song or any of the masters for the for the presentation or the show.
yeah,
That's
at
cool.
least in our case. I can't speak for everybody, but that's
Yeah,
how it works for the stuff we ran.
nice. Yeah, it's like nice to hear like the ways that people are being creative and like trying to engage even from the like retail and the venue side. Because I do feel for like a lot of the live production side of our industry, and I really do hope that they can survive through everything. And we
Yeah,
do have tours and venues like to go back to after however much longer this will last. So yeah, I know in Alberta we're like a little bit away from that stuff taking place. But
yeah,
I think that the venues and the stores trying to like engage on that side would be cool. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's been great. Yeah, digital. Everything's gone digital, which is, you know, we've seen some success in it. Even radio stuff, which was like KEXP live sessions. We did one of those, and WXPN World Cafe session. We did one of those. You know, things like that, Tiny Desk, those kind of things that are, um, you know, big drivers of discoverability, especially on YouTube. Used to be you had to be touring through that location and like coordinate to film in the studio, which has its benefits, obviously, like for an artist. But I think that because they all became online from home sessions, it opened up, you know, the opportunity to, you know, to maybe some artists that weren't going to be passing through that area on that particular, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it has opened people to like a whole another side of how we can all engage on different platforms. And yeah, it's not very easy to do all those press things when you're on tour either. So if there's access to do it before you're even in the city, like well ahead, like you can also get way more traction for your future show. You
Yeah,
know, just like sort of cool to like look at it in terms of there's a lot of like new growth in the ways that a lot of these old ways of doing things can also exist with now the new ways of doing things. Like
totally.
we're putting this whole conference online. It's a whole new ball game. And normally it would be 5 days in person, and we've stretched it to be like 5 weeks of content. And now it can just live online and people can discover it when they want. So yeah, and it will probably be a part of our future conference planning and strategy too,
That's
because it's
great.
neat. We can talk with people wherever, and it's easy. And I don't have
Totally.
to coordinate flights and do all those things. Um, just well, like all the platforms and different strategies that you're using sound great, and like you've kept the ball rolling, which is motivating, and hopefully people take a lot of notes from that. But to close the chat up, what do you see for the future? like in terms of digital strategy and how fans find music and engage with stuff, and general thoughts.
General thoughts, I think, we're seeing already kind of like a vinyl renaissance, if you will. And I think that in terms of digital, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of vinyl buying is going hand in hand with, fans experiencing the record maybe multiple times on a DSP or
Mhm.
otherwise, or just seeing a YouTube video or seeing Instagram post, wherever they experience it online. That's not going to stop. So I think that that's one area I think that we're going to see even more growth in is just, vinyl buying and the connection between digital to physical sales. Um, and I think also just kind of like everything on the internet. And I like to study computer science and like algorithms and machine learning and all of this stuff. I think it really helps better understand how the platforms are evolving when you start to really dig into the algorithm. And and I think maybe this is like the dark side of how digital is going, but I think that all of those applications are only going to get stronger. And I think that we're going to see two things. We're going to see maybe a splitting of like, the crate digger type folks veering maybe off of digital platforms a little more, and then folks that really love recommendations and playlists, etc., like doubling down. I think the sort of overall data, the slowing down of subscriptions, like that kind of thing, is a telltale sign of this kind of split. Like the subscriptions kind of like slowing down and then Bandcamp taking off. It's like I just see two kind of tentacles forming.
Right. Yeah. So like one side of it's like way more automated, like not necessarily like personally digging, but just letting the algorithm feed you whatever. And then the other side of it being like, no, I'm curating what I like and I'm doing.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think strategies for any label or artist or anybody moving forward is just sort of like, you know, looking at both type of listener and doing things that make sense for both, because at the end of the day, you know, they're all fans. No matter which way they want to experience your music, they're fans. So
Yeah, 100%. So like try to learn how people discover and communicate the best way you can to those things, those
yeah,
platforms, not things. Like I've heard a lot of people state that like kids probably are finding a lot of their new music on TikTok.
yeah, I
Like
believe.
how do you get to them? Like when we were teenagers, we were probably going to the record store and like talking to the guy behind the counter. Now kids are just scrolling TikTok and getting their feed.
Exactly. And part of the strategy for us is making sure that our tracks, every time we release a single, it's out in editorial playlists like somewhere, so that if
Mm.
tangentially discovery is happening on TikTok and people are going to a specific artist and that artist is in a playlist, like
Mhm.
our music that aligns with that is there as well and ready to be discovered. Not that like it will be discovered, or
Mhm.
a high percentage of it potentially could be passive listening, but I think you know it will be discovered. It's the same thing as like a record in a record store. You're not guaranteed unless you're paying for like end caps and like prime placement.
Yeah, totally. It's
Your
the
records still have
thing.
to be, yeah. So that's sort of how I've been thinking about,
Like
we've been thinking.
discovered both deeper and dead from playlists. I feel that
Yeah,
may but yeah, that's cool because then it leads you down a new path. You're like, oh, these bands are awesome. And then you can like figure out what the label is, and then the label leads you down. And like, yeah, it's sort of a fun adventure if you want to go on it.
yeah. And back to TikTok, we've been trying to sort of like dabble, but I think the platform isn't necessarily tailored to like marketing, you know.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of shunned on the platform, so it's not really like, you know,
Yeah.
from
It's
a
like, how do you
traditional
do it
sense.
creatively from a label perspective? I've been trying to think that through too. I'm like, I don't know how to approach this platform. But yeah, it's a bit more like very creative and like sort of drawing people in to participate with one another. And it's just like you have to think outside the box. And it's
Yeah,
a whole new way of communicating on a social platform that we are probably and not used to, but it's needed, you know?
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
And their algorithms apparently really amazing because it is really open-ended in terms of discovering, and anyone can like post something and it can just sort of network out there like crazy, which is cool.
Yeah,
You don't have
totally.
to pay for that just yet. But yeah, it was very nice to like chat and get a sense of what you've been up to and what platforms, and yeah, keeping the ball rolling in crazy times. But I guess we have all these resources and different ways to stay connected, which is great and
Totally.
beneficial
Thanks
in
for,
its own way.
yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, yeah, awesome to chat. But yeah, we sign off on